When I said the NFL really wanted us all to suffer, yes, I'm including you Lions fans, this past Monday when, yes, the Lions took on my San Francisco 49ers in this game that the NFL, for whatever reason, didn't want to flex out. Well, I initially thought that this was going to be a blowout. I even thought it was going to be a shutout. Even though the Lions didn't have anything to play for ahead of their major winner-take-all matchup against the Minnesota Vikings in the final game of this regular season. But, once again, as I always am here on Very Cold Lasagna, I was so wrong. Well, what else is new here on this filthy casual podcast? But alas, let's talk about this game. Let's talk about this Week 17 matchup that the 49ers were already eliminated from playoff contention. They want to play for pride. They want to play with heart. And, well, they want to make all of us, including myself, suffer in, well, some very wrong ways. Even though I said the Lions were going to maul the Niners, even though they didn't really have anything to play for. Let's look at it from the Niners perspective first. Let's do things in reverse order, like I usually don't do all season long. So from the Niners perspective, the Niners, because they were the home team, that's why I'm doing it in reverse order this time. The Niners, they played with heart, and I'll give them credit to this. They played with heart, they played with conviction from the very jump of this game. And offensively, they torched the Lions' beat-up defense. They really attacked them in this game. The standout of this game has to be Ricky Pearsall, the rookie receiver, the receiver we drafted. He had his best game all year. And I know a lot of people picked on him. They criticized him. Is he really the first-round draft pick that the Niners really reached for him? Well, we really didn't really know for sure quite yet. I still am unsure about him. I've let him slide to a degree because of the incident that he had back in August. He didn't really get a lot of time to really develop this past year because of the shooting incident. And yeah, not really a lot of time to develop chemistry with Brock Purdy. But I felt like this was his best standout game under the bright lights of Monday night. Purdy found him in a lot of open space in this game. Pearsall made some really nice catches and really nice yaks the yards after catch. And he almost got some trick plays in too with Purdy, and I believe it was Debo on a few occasions, but ultimately it didn't work out. But hey, he at least tried to make something out of it. He also got his second touchdown of the year in this game. So Pearsall really had a good game in this one. He even got over 100 yards receiving. So he really had I wouldn't say necessarily breakout game, but one that really stood out. George Kittle, once again, was heavily involved and reached over 1,000 yards on the season. Definitely going to be a Pro Bowler for sure, if not already. So it seemed like the Niners were going to take the Lions to town and actually upset them. Because for as much as the Lions were as habanero hot as they were on offense, well, I mean, their defense, not so much. Because as beat up as the Niners were on offense, missing their one of their top receivers in Brandon Ayuk, more than half of their starting offensive line was out. I mean, the Niners were still fighting. They were still playing with pride. I mean, not hashtag losing them all. At least not in the way that they're supposed to, but they were taking the Lions to town. But then the real fun began towards the end of the third quarter, huh, pal? As the Niners finally did understand the assignment of hashtag losing them all. Brock Purdy threw an interception to Kirby Joseph, which completely changed the tide of this game. Purdy actually made a pretty interesting decision to throw it a tad too high for Pearsall anyways. And yeah, not necessarily a good throw by Purdy. So yeah, it had to be a little bit lower for Pearsall to catch, but just a little too high. But Kirby Joseph catches that. The Lions then took advantage of that to go on this touchdown drive to take the lead that the Niners didn't really catch up on. And then our favorite kicker, Jake Moody, he had a fun night, huh? Two 2 missed extra points, and then missed a long field goal before the half, missed another one in the third quarter, right after the touchdown, after Purdy's interception. And then after this like second long field goal, I think I heard on the TV broadcast, the Niner fans at Levi's, they were booing Jake Moody. They were booing him even before he attempted this field goal. Just goes to show you, man. Just goes to show you how much faith these faithful have in Jake Moody at this point of the year. Time to cut him. It's time to cut his ass, please. Find a new kicker. But hell, Kyle Shanahan still believes in Jake Moody just as the world believes in Joe Hendry. No, but we all seriously believe in Joe Hendry. But then the fun even continued. Like we all knew the assignment was, as Purdy threw a second interception to Brian Branch. As yeah, he understood the assignment well already by this point. Hashtag lose them all. And the Niners defense also got in on the assignment. They already fully understood what the assignment was at this point, as they were kind enough to let Jahmyr Gibbs run 30 yards to the house for the go-ahead touchdown score. The Lions had a 40-28 advantage by that point with about 3 minutes to go. So, yeah, by that point, the game was over for both teams. There wasn't really much to do. But if we're being serious for a second, if we want to pause the fun and games for a bit, there was some serious concern from pretty much everybody, including myself, because Brock Purdy did leave the game with some kind of injury to his throwing arm again, and it was the same arm that he got hurt in the NFC Championship game almost 2 years ago. And fortunately, though, he didn't suffer any like tear in the UCL, the elbow. But Kyle Shanahan said after the game, he's gonna have some further testing, but more than likely his season is done, especially on a short rest. In the next game against Arizona, and either way, whether he was hurt minor or major, I was gonna advise against Kyle, not playing in the next game against Arizona anyways, because Josh Dobbs came in to replace Purdy and he cut the Lions' lead to 6. But then, of course, Jake Moody fucked up the extra point and even the onside kick to end the game. Once again, cut his ass. Cut Jake Moody's ass in the offseason, please. Like, no one believes in him. Not even John Lynch, who ESPN cut to him like a couple times, and he looked pissed that Jake Moody missed these kicks. Like, oh my Lord. So, let's look at it from the Lions' perspective. The Lions, they didn't really have anything to play for in this game. The Vikings won their game yesterday against the Packers. They are 14-2. The Vikings almost blew their game yesterday. Yesterday, when I mean Monday or Sunday. I'm recording this on a Monday, but they almost blew their game Sunday, regardless. And then this game against the 49ers for the Lions was essentially meaningless. They didn't really have anything to play for when it came to seeding, because whether they won or lost, this upcoming game against the Vikings was going to be winner take all. So, like I said in the preview, the lead up to this game, this was going to be a warm-up game for the Lions. Just not the warm-up game I envisioned for Detroit. So, for those of you saying, this is not going to be a blowout. This is not going to be a smashing of the 49ers. There, you can have your ha-ha and hee-hee moment on me again. But anyway, Jared Goff in his offense, they had to keep pace with the 49ers because they're beating up defense. But I mean, at least with this Niners defense, it's just as beaten up with injuries and missing pieces like Dre Greenlaw, Travarius Ward, Javon Hargrave. There's plenty of missing pieces of their own that this habanero hot Lions offense, they didn't have too much of an issue with. And what was an issue, though, like I said, going back to that paper thin defense, barely any pressure on Brock Purdy. Aside from 3 sacks, which were pretty much negated by chunk passes immediately afterwards and a touchdown. So, yeah, that paper thin defense, it's really starting to crack, especially against some of these hotter teams like the Bills, especially like a couple weeks ago. And then you're going to this game against the Minnesota Vikings. It's getting really concerning for the Lions. You're lucky that the Lions offense is able to match other teams' opposing offenses with how well they're doing. So, yeah, the fact that this Lions defense, for as paper thin as it is, it couldn't generate any pressure on Brock Purdy, who doesn't have more than half of his starting offensive line out there. And not even that, he doesn't have like more than half of his overall offensive line depth in there. Yeah, he was still able to connect with Ricky Pearsall and George Kittle a lot and, get a lot of open space with them. He had a lot of time to throw for half of this game. So the back end did able to get those 2 interceptions on Purdy that shifted the game in their favor. They eventually took a sizable lead before winning this game 40-34. Again, the Lions offense has been more than fine, but like I said, in order for them to get the top seed over the Vikings, they really need someone in that front 7. I know Brian Branch is there, but they're going to need more than just Brian Branch to make up for not having Aiden Hutchinson for if he's going to be able to make it back for the NFC Championship game. That's if the Lions even get to that point, especially with all these defensive injuries. So overall, when you look at this game, not really a lot of meaning to this one. I mean, especially considering with me, I was watching both this and admittedly Monday Night Raw because it was the last Raw before Netflix. And if you thought this was meaningless, well, Monday Night Raw was meaningless too, and it was the last one before Netflix. So yeah, this is a meaningless game for Detroit. They have a winner-take-all game next week against the Vikings. But getting reps for everyone, it was still something at least. Meanwhile, for my 49ers, they tried as they might. They didn't make the tank job too obvious, at least. But considering how the game ended, and at least Kyle Shanahan received some decent news about Brock Purdy and his injury, and that throwing elbow is not torn again. But let's see what we can find out in the next couple of days. Hopefully the MRI will show that there's no further damage. Yeah, Kyle might want to think about pulling some of the starters out in the final game against Arizona to avoid any more injuries. So speaking of which, that game, yeah, the Niners finished their season in the desert to take on the Arizona Cardinals, who are 7-9 in what's basically this exhibition matchup. Yeah, it's a exhibition pretty much. The Cardinals last week, they basically had a chance to make things easier on the 49ers campaign to hashtag lose them all. But they made it a tad bit harder because Kyle Murray threw this game-losing interception to Caleb Witherspoon in the end zone against the LA Rams. And yeah, they lost that low-scoring affair on a Saturday. So yeah, makes the Niners position to stay where they are at number 11 a tad bit harder for this one in the draft. So Niner coaches decided whether or not they'll play its starters. Kyle is probably not going to play Brock Purdy out of precaution with that elbow injury. Jonathan Gannon hasn't decided whether or not he's going to play Kyler Murray. But we'll find out in the coming days leading up to this final quote-unquote game between both of these teams. But their mission remains clear for both of them. And that's to hashtag, not both of them. No, only the Niners. The Cardinals, no. They can do whatever they want because Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch need to stay the course. They need to stay the course for this final game. And it's the hashtag lose them all. Lose them all for that top 12 draft pick at number 11. Stay the course at the number 11th overall pick in this NFL draft to get the best possible offensive lineman to protect Brock Purdy next season. That's the goal here for this final game But we'll look more into that final game when we get there later on. So let me know your thoughts, your observations about this Week 17 game. Who stood out to you in this one? The result is pretty irrelevant at this point for the 49ers. But let me know your thoughts. Which player stood out to you in this one? What concern do you have about Brock Purdy's injury? Let me know in the comments below. Let's have a conversation about it. And you can also roast me about my little title of the preview video as well for this game. So either way, let's have a conversation about this game and our thoughts about it. And until the next one, keep the lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of sports. And I will see you in the new year of 2025 and another year of Very Cold Lasagna. But until then, peace out.